Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's the In the 11 podcast. I'm your host, Brendan Griffiths, and this is the show where we bring on those from the world of football to show you what it takes to be in the 11 at the highest possible level. This week's guest is a good friend of mine and fellow Beestera coach, Kurtis Smith, the director of team training at Beestera Soccer Training. So another installment of our Beestera soccer series that we are running here, introducing you to all the staff and some of the amazing coaches and stories that we have over at Beestera. This was a really fun conversation for me, and hopefully it'll be an interesting one for all of you out there who are maybe aspiring coaches. Kurtis has a wealth of knowledge and experience and really unique experiences from, being a collegiate coach to a youth coach, running his own youth club. He also was a performance analyst back in Wales before he came and made his way over to the United States. So, like I said, a real wealth of knowledge and unique experience from Kurtis when it comes to the coaching world. So, as I've kind of alluded to in past episodes, this is, whether it be myself in my coaching career and my playing career, or some of the amazing network that I have at my sort of disposal to be able to talk to. There's so much that I can offer in terms of helping young players and helping young coaches kind of reach the next step in their career. So if you're interested in setting up a call with me, as I'm offering career consultant services to young athletes who are looking to become professional players, or also to coaches out there who are looking to make their way in their coaching career, take the next step in their coaching career, I would encourage you to check out the link down below and schedule a call with me. I hope to be able to help a lot of you out there in the next step in your career. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to myself and Kurtis. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the In11 podcast. Joining us today, a colleague of mine at Beestera Soccer Training, Kurtis Smith, is stepping into the 11. Looking forward to diving into his story, coming over to the United States, what you're up to now, just your coaching kind of career as a whole. Appreciate you coming on the pod, man.
Yeah, no worries. Looking forward to it. It's always good to jump on one of these with a friend. So.
Yeah, a little less intimidating than when somebody just wants to interview you. I can attest to that for sure. Well, yeah, let's dive into it, man. So how many years now have you been in the States?
Oh, geez. Struggle to keep up with that sometimes. But I think it's going on just past 7 years now.
Okay.
So obviously originally from Wales over in the UK. Started my journey there. Really just fell in love with coaching as soon as I realised that I wasn't going to be that player that we all think we're maybe going to be. And yeah, came out here and haven't really looked back since. So
you have an interesting background that I definitely want to learn more about when it comes to kind of the educational piece of how you went about getting your coaching career off the ground, right? Like you said, a lot of players will go kind of as far as they can in terms of their playing career. And then maybe when they've realized they're not going to hit the potential that they want to, or maybe they have more of a passion for coaching, that's when they just sort of make that transition. And then maybe they go get the badges, or they just get involved with a grassroots club and build it up from there. But you actually went the route of kind of going to university to pursue this specific avenue of coaching and coaching development. What was that process like for you? And did you kind of decide between, getting just involved with your local club and building it up that way?
yeah, I suppose I'm really lucky, really, in the sense of I don't want to be someone that tells people to give up on their dreams here, but I think I was realistic fairly early on from the sense of I wasn't going to be that player.
Mm-hmm.
So I think around really the age of 16, I started helping out with my local teams over in Newtown in Mid Wales, and then at the same time, I actually started a football academy course in Wales. I was really lucky. There's a small college in my town where you would play a game during the week for the college. You would be in a class with all your teammates, and then you would be kind of doing your coaching badges on the side.
Mm-hmm.
So that allowed me to carry on playing at a fairly good level.
Yeah.
And then obviously build a rapport with people in my class, and then obviously learn to do a little bit of coaching, starting my badges and stuff as well. So being able to play and learn how to be a coach at the same time really kind of set me up for a career after maybe playing. So
yeah. So when you have this kind of fully immersive experience at the university where you get to play, you get to coach, you get the kind of like more maybe theoretical or just classroom knowledge as well, are you starting to kind of form in your head maybe the roadmap of what your career is going to be like? Are you already starting to think what it is that you want to do in the world of football?
I think, yeah. I think coaching always was something that I started looking towards at around the age of 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a big part of that was I wasn't the most confident person in my class or in life or socially. But as soon as I kind of stepped on the field as a player, I felt like I could really communicate effectively. I felt this, real burst of confidence every time I did. So when it kind of got to the point I realized I wasn't going to play, I still wanted that experience of being on the field, being able to communicate, feel confident. And so that definitely was something that made me think that I think this is for me. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point that you make. I think a lot of players have that feeling of like the pitch kind of allows them this opportunity to access this different part of their personality that you don't necessarily get to in your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of people recognize that in the form of playing, but I think coaching gives you that same buzz. That's amazing. And so then too, I'm curious as well, like specifically, I know you kind of feel like you want to be on the touchline.
Yep.
Is there an idea of, I want to do it at the youth level, I want to do it at a professional level? Like, are you already starting to formulate that, or is it just I'm trying to get educated and figure it out after?
Yeah, I think it was a case of taking one step at a time, and always that image in the back of your mind that you're going to be like the next Pep Guardiola.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you progress, you kind of realize that's how tough a task that is. But taking it one step at a time, I think I was doing some supply teaching on the side when I went to the University of South Wales after college. And I think that was really important having that experience, because for me, in terms of coaching, especially youth, if you can get that classroom management side of things down first, then it allows you to kind of express your ideas more of a coach. Whereas if you're really focusing on the behavior of the players and you maybe haven't got them in doing the right things at the right times or engaged throughout your session, then it becomes a lot harder to really give your message and expand your knowledge as a coach. So.
When you evaluate yourself as a coach, or I know you do a lot of work now with working with so many other coaches in the area, how do you see a lot of times coaches approach that decision maybe, or more so the balance between those two things, between coaching and like the behavior side of it? I guess my question more so is, how much does a coach need to rely on sort of the correcting the behaviors and getting the environment that they want for the session versus actually coaching the topics that they're trying to?
Yeah, I think a lot of people that first start out in coaching, including myself, really, they'll go into a session and they'll kind of set it up as if they were a player in that session.
Yeah.
So maybe it isn't age appropriate. Maybe, you're thinking that they're going to be as engaged and as motivated as you are. And obviously, the younger that the players are, the more you have to kind of give them that enjoyment factor and structure the session in a way where they can enjoy it and learn at the same time. So I definitely think even now we have a lot of volunteers that we work with at local clubs, and they don't get paid to coach. They're just turning up straight after working a full-time job. And a lot of the times when we have maybe a teacher that takes on that volunteer role, they already have like a massive head start. They know how to engage the players. And, even if they're not the best coach in the world, the players tend to get a good sense of enjoyment and learning out of those sessions. So.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask is it's like we experience that on a week-to-week basis where you have teams where you can walk in and it's basically, as simple as this sounds, it's soccer from start to finish.
Yeah.
And then you have teams, where you do after the session, you're talking to, a fellow coach, and you're like, I spent the first 20, 25 minutes just trying to get them back into the kind of the world of soccer and trying to get them engaged into what we were doing that night, because they're just completely out there, whether it be from school or whatever, which I think is such a unique, different challenge that I've adjusted to working with youth players, especially on the younger levels.
Yeah.
Like, because I kind of got my start in my career in terms of coaching, like at the college level and at the even sort of upper ages of the youth level.
Yeah.
So I was like so unaccustomed to, you know, foot on the ball so I know you're listening, right? Like clap 3 times and put your hand on your head. Like that was such a adjustment for me. And that's why I'm curious to ask you about it. Cause it's like, I think a lot of coaches, especially that come from a higher level, maybe like that playing route, right? And then they go into the youth level. It's like, it's a whole different world.
Yeah, 100%. I think you made a great point. Like those intention grabbers and those little tools that you can use really change your life. I feel like there's a lot of type A personalities over here in the US where there's a structure, there's a way of doing anything. Like this is my session laid up, every coaching point, every kind of minute down to the T.
Yep.
And that's kind of a hard way to coach at times, because especially in the role that we do, where we're working with different teams on a daily basis, sometimes you don't know what kind of team you're going to get. So you have to always be ready to make it adaptable, and just come back to couple of key points really, which is make it fun, and make sure the kids go away having learned something as well. So those are always the 2 things that I'll come back to in a session.
Yeah. And if we dive a little bit more into that path of you actually coming over from the UK, right? Like we kind of established the education background that you got and working with some of your local clubs. And now I know, as you mentioned, there's definitely differences that you've seen in the States versus your sort of upbringing as a coach. What was the process like of you coming over here? And was it always something that you kind of had in your mind about traveling or living in the States or working abroad?
I think while I was in the UK, I think you have to be such a journeyman in the UK to make it at the game. And any job that you're applying for, especially at the higher levels where you get paid, it's you competing against ex-players, people who have played for the club for 20 years and they're a club legend. So it's really tough to kind of break through those barriers and work at higher levels. And then from the sense of if you're not working with as high level teams, then really it's very much a volunteer role, doing it for fun, doing it on the side. And I just wanted it to be something that I could do full time. And originally that meant me coming out here for a summer, working with a company called UK Elite, just working on their camps, coaching some teams, stuff like that. And I kind of just fell in love with being on the grass the whole time, and just really getting to explore different ideas, different teaching techniques. And that kind of really helped me develop as a coach. And I just think you just cannot put the hours in on the field that you can here. So that very much helped me improve and develop. So.
Yeah, I know we've definitely talked about that, and it's like it's that. I think it's what a lot of people are in the United States are frustrated by is sort of like our pay to play system, right? Like it's very expensive for a lot of kids in our country to be able to play this game or really any sport.
Yeah.
But again, it's like I think a lot of people just look at it from the negative side of what America is offering you. And they don't see sort of the flip side, whereas like, yes, in the UK or in Europe, it may be a little bit easier for players to go out and play the sport. But then again, like it's that much harder for coaches. It's that much harder to get coaches that are going to be able, because realistically, right, how much of your time can you volunteer? Like it's a beautiful thing to go and volunteer your time for your local club, but like all of us have bills that we need to pay and keeping a roof over our head. So it's tough for, I mean, do you still know, I guess even talk to me about some of the other coaches that were in your class or coaches that you worked with like around the UK, like are a lot of them still in the game or did some of them have to kind of transition out because there wasn't a path through?
Yeah, I think there's definitely people took lots of different paths. I think one of the most successful paths that people who stayed in the UK took was definitely the performance analyst route. I felt, especially when I was coming through university sort of 10 years ago now, like that was just starting to be a really big part of the game. So it was almost like everyone at my age had a chance to get their foot in the door early and take those opportunities up. So there was definitely 3 or 4 guys that have gone on to that sort of thing. One of my best friends, Josh Morris, is now actually working at Brighton. So just, being able to lean on him sometimes myself and ask him, what does De Zerbi do in a session? What does that look like? Is obviously really, really amazing for me as well. So I think all those different aspects around the game that don't necessarily mean being the head coach or being the manager, I think they're always a good way to get your kind of foot in the door and then get the contacts and get to know the people that you need to know for those additional opportunities in the future.
Yeah.
So,
and you even had some of that experience as well on the analyst side. And And so for you, was that just something where you didn't feel like you were really in and around the players enough and really like kind of touching what it was that you loved about, being involved in football?
Yeah, I would say in terms of my development as a coach, that was always kind of the way I saw it. And, there would be nights where it'd be like -10. I'd be stood on the top of a 20-foot gantry,
Mm-hmm.
just watching the players train and filming the session and stuff like that. And, how often do you get to just watch coaches that are better than you, like consistently throughout the week? And I just gained so much knowledge from doing that. So while it wasn't always the best thing for me in terms of, keeping my sanity and staying warm, I definitely learned a lot. And, just getting to watch back the games as a full-time job and just watch soccer. I mean, I do that for free now. I watch Premier League games all the time.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that you can still enjoy and pick out of. I would say the only negative from that now is if I watch a game on the TV, I'm always looking at it from an analyst perspective sometimes as well. And that can be a bit of a hindrance in terms of enjoyment. But
Yeah.
but overall, it's really positive for me in my career. So
Yeah. Because that's something I've always been impressed by about your career is like, I think the array and like the wide variety of different experiences that you've had in your career within the game thus far is like, I'm sure, I wonder if you've ever even thought about it, like, being able to be an analyst at nearly the top level, you've coached teams, you've built a club, you do supplemental training, like you've kind of experienced nearly everything that the game has to offer. So I think it like now and where you've sort of found yourself, you can't say that you haven't sort of tried everything that the game has to offer.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, as you look at your career, do you feel a little bit of that? Like you kind of found the right balance of things that work for you in terms of coaching and what you like to get out of it?
100%. And I think I always wanted to be a coach from that young age, and I knew that. But doing all these little extra things, teaching, analysis, like all it does is give me an extra perspective in terms of the game that helps me improve as a coach. And I think that's, something really valuable, and not many people get that chance to do that. And I think at the level which we do coach now, for example, I coach a kind of lower level college team and also a high level summer team. I think you have to be able to do everything. You don't have an analyst, you don't have a fitness coach, you don't have all these things. So just having a little bit of knowledge yourself, and even bringing in some volunteers and giving them a chance to kind of experience the role, but from knowledge that you can give them, I think it is really valuable as well. So,
yeah. Can you speak to that at all? Maybe even specifically like your time in America, because I know for myself, like I realized that you needed to wear a lot of different hats when you're like in the early stages of your coaching career, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so few people that can just say, I'm a college coach. Like when you're in the early stage of your career, right? Or whether it's your assistant or you're the head coach of, like you said, maybe a junior college or something. And it's like, I am a junior college coach. I'm a camp coach in the summer. I have 2 club teams that I coach, and that's sort of how you make everything work from a coaching perspective and from a financial perspective and all that type of stuff. Like, was that an adjustment for you when you came over to the States and started to build your career of understanding like, all right, I'm gonna have to do a lot to make this work on a full-time level?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, and I think there's always the danger of doing too much as well. And I think we've all experienced that a little bit as coaches or as players, like transition to coaches. Is when you're doing all of those things all the time, you have to be careful of looking after yourself in the meantime as well.
Yeah.
So, when I started my own club 4 or 5 years ago now and started taking all those responsibilities of running a business, recruiting players, training players, like building a club curriculum, all of those things, there were times where I got to the point where I broke down from the sense of, I'm doing so much here, I'm overwhelmed. So I think as important as getting all those experiences are while you're young, I think ultimately you have to ensure you're looking after yourself as well. So just testing the waters, but then trying to find maybe those 1 or 2 things that you really enjoy most and sticking with them from that point. So
Yeah. I mean, what advice would you kind of give to a coach that is maybe in that stage? I remember having conversations with Tucker, who we'll have on the show soon, because he was kind of right there in the trenches with you when you were building Hudson Valley and that club. And I think, I mean, I'm sure you can even speak to what a beast like having your own club is, and building your own club and growing it has to be, you know, such a huge task to undertake. But like, how does a coach that's coming up, or like you said, even a player or really anyone within the game, how do you make sure that you are taking care of yourself when you're working maybe so 70, 80-hour weeks like I know that you were at the time?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say. So when I did start a club, for the first year and a half or so, I was just me. We did grow to the point of like 4 teams in that year and a half. And by the time I brought Tucker on, we grew to 8 teams. And I think initially when Tucker first came on, I was still trying to do everything myself. You know, like Tucker will help out. I'll give him the tools he needs and kind of tell him where to go, what to do. But I was still taking on a lot of that pressure myself. So I think it's 2 things really. Is one is learning to accept help and like feel vulnerable from that sense, and giving Tucker more license and more responsibilities was ultimately one of the best things I did, putting that trust in him. And also learning to say no. I think, you know, it's so easy to just say yes to everything. And again, like, oh, this is going to help me in my career. But if you take on so many different things that not all of them are done to the best of your ability, then ultimately that's going to be more of a hindrance than a help anyway. So that's definitely a journey that I'm still on, to be honest. Learning to say no. Am I really excited about it? Is it something that, you know, I'm prepared to really put the effort in and feel like I've done the best of my ability? If not, then it's probably not something that I should be looking at this time. So,
yeah. That power of the word no is such a important thing, I think, that you talk about, because like it's just sort of the way that I feel like you're almost trained as a young coach coming up, is like, say yes to everything, be a sponge to everything, any opportunity that you get, right? It's so hard to get an opportunity, so who are you to turn one down, right? And then that sort of mindset becomes ingrained in you, and it just keeps recycling over and over, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're in this position where you just have too much, and you're not really able to give your best to the opportunities that you want to. And it's been a huge thing for me to learn as well, like, okay, I don't have to coach 7 days a week this week. Maybe a day where I get to do something completely for myself and unrelated to soccer is what's going to be best for me, and what's actually going to allow me to be a better coach or allow me to be a better player or whatever. Like I think that's a hard thing for people in the game to realize, because a lot of times it's so all consuming of your life.
Have you got any experiences yourself where you maybe said no from a playing standpoint and it was a good decision, or maybe you said yes and it wasn't?
From a playing standpoint, that's a good question. You know, I think probably, honestly, if it might be even happening sort of right now, where I've had, you know, people like yourself or like certain people ask me kind of about, hey, do you want to come play Shockers this summer?
Yeah.
And I think normally I just always like an opportunity to play. Yeah. But I'm now in this stage where I'm like, is that going to make me happy this summer? And like, it's, you know, there's a lot of different factors to it. One, like maybe having a bit more of my time back in the summer for myself, or doing other things that I want to do. Two, it's like, you know, no disrespect to the coaching staff of that club, like, but I didn't feel the best after the last season I had played with them, like in terms of my, you know, development with them and my part in the team. So it's like, do I really want to go and put myself in a position where I'm not the most happy for people that maybe don't really value what I have to bring to the table anyway? And it's like, so it's a great question that you ask. And I think, it's difficult for players, because it's like, it's so hard to get an opportunity as a player. So, you know, it's only really the guys at the top level that can really say like, no, I'm not going to play for you, or I'm not doing this, or I'm not playing for you unless I'm getting this much money. For the vast majority of the rest of us, it's like, yes, please, whatever you'll take, like whatever you'll give, we'll take. And I can see how sometimes that bleeds a little bit into coaching too, you know?
No, it's definitely a really tough thing to manage, and I think it's important. Like, you know, my suggestion would never be to ignore opportunities or not search for them, but just be really, reflective in terms of what have I done before? Is this something that's going to add value to me in the future? And then, like you said, is it something that you're really going to enjoy and something that, is not going to become more of a chore than a positive experience. So,
yeah. So how does the time with the club, right? How does that sort of develop and pan out? Because I mean, you ran the club for what, 4 years, 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, around 2.5, 3
Okay,
years.
2.5, 3.
Yeah, so we
at times probably felt like 4.
felt like 40. But it started off with one rec team that we kind of converted into a travel team, an under 10 girls team. I think the next year it was 4 teams, and the next year after that it was 8 teams. And it was an hour and a half away from where I live, so I think that it became 7 days a week as well when you think of games and practices. And when it gets to a point where you're driving an hour and a half every day, you can't leave your house at 7, get home at 11, and that cycle continues. I just got to the point where I wasn't really looking forward to waking up that next morning, and that was kind of the time that I decided that I've taken on too much here. It's maybe time to let people in that area continue with the club and hopefully give those opportunities as well. And I think one of the best stories that shows some of the biggest mistakes that I made is, one year that we were at the club was actually during COVID. Obviously a big challenge for everyone in every industry, but a lot of our players, obviously we couldn't train for the whole spring season, I think it was. We missed that whole season. And then as a new business, we couldn't really afford to give everyone their money back as well, and still keep the coaches on staff, etc. So I came up with a system where I was like, I'm going to one-to-one train basically all the players in the club. So we're going to do it socially distanced. We're going to do Zoom sessions, all of this stuff. And it got to the point where I was trying to do one-to-one sessions with 80 different players during the week. And not all of them signed up, but there was a good amount that did. And again, it just, one of the biggest mistakes of my life is just, thinking that I can take all that on and it's the right thing to do from that perspective, but it wasn't the right thing for me to do as a person. So again, just massive lessons learned in terms of taking on too much. So
yeah, it's a hard process to learn for and like we both have said during this podcast, so I think we're still both trying to do it. There's times where I still feel like I have to reassess, whether it's a week-to-week basis, a month-to-month basis, okay, how much do I really have on my plate right now, and how much do I still want to have on my plate? How much value am I bringing to each thing that's on my plate, and other things that I need to take off?
Yeah.
Right. It's always a balancing act. How did the transition happen from sort of Hudson Valley to Beestera?
Yeah. So honestly, just one of the best things that happened to me was meeting those guys at Beestera, and I knew them a little bit just through friends. But during that time where I was maybe struggling a little bit with my role down in the Hudson Valley, I actually got put in touch with them to just help them out of a camp one week that was free in the summer. So I met them a little bit there. And then when things were going on to the point where I decided I did want a new challenge and it was becoming too much, those became the first guys that I spoke to. And I think just finding people who are of a similar mindset to you in terms of the way that soccer should look, in terms of the way that we really focus on development and try and improve each other as a staff and coaches, I think that just became something where I was like, hang on, I've been my own boss for the last 3 years. I've had no one to learn off really but myself. And I just felt the need to learn again and to really develop myself. So that's kind of the reason I took that on.
Yeah. And so, and obviously you're the first one that we're recording, but I'm looking forward to kind of hearing everybody's story when it comes to, with their start with Beestera, their journey with Beestera. I know I think it's, and this may sound sort of like we're just doing a propaganda podcast for Beestera, but I think it goes to show each of us have had so many different experiences within the game. We've been in so many different environments, and when I tell people Beestera is very different than anything else when it comes to the game, because it's I think they have always had a grasp of the things that we're talking about today. How do you, as a coach, how do you push yourself and develop and say yes to the opportunities that make sense to you and that are going to help you and give you that fulfillment that you're looking for, but also they are never going to push back when you are kind of needing to say no to certain things.
Yeah.
And that's something that everyone, I feel like, in Beestera, maybe besides Mike. No, just kidding. Just a joke, Mike. Everyone in Beestera is like very they stay true to that, right?
Yeah.
Like, was that at all an adjustment for you? Because like I know you and I have talked about this at points. Like, I think you still brought that same sort of grinder mentality to when you came to Beestera, and there'd be times where we'd all be talking and be like, "Curtis, it's okay, man. Like, go take a Sunday off."
I think what you said is they're okay with you saying no, but I think it was even more than that when I joined Beestera. I think it was they encouraged me to say no.
Yeah,
and I think that was really important for me at that time in my life. And I think just the way that Beestera is set up and the culture that they put in place for not just the players, but the coaches as well, is, everything that you do just comes back to a couple of simple phrases like developing great players, great people. And if you can always come back to those sort of phrases and a good structure of doing things, and it just helps you with your decision-making process as well. And ultimately part of that is having coaches who are fulfilled and excited about what they're doing and not, working themselves into the ground to the point they don't enjoy what they do anymore. So
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, because I don't want people to think at the the staff and the coaches and the group that we have at Beestera is like that we all still love what we do and we work very hard and we work a lot at it. But it's just like, there's a definitely a emphasis on kind of truly balancing that work and that life. That I think is often a rarity when it comes to other places and other places that I've been a part of. And part of that is because sometimes it's so drastic and so dramatic, in other places. Like, I've spoken to college coaches where it's like they are just working 60 hours a week all the time. That's just always what it is. And like, so that's kind of why I speak about the difference that Beestera is, like the Beestera difference. It's something that I've always come back to and always kind of reflected on, like, wow, it's a different culture than I think what is currently prevalent in the game.
And I think one of the things that they do so well as a company and as owners is the first question that they'll always ask any new member of staff is, what is it that excites you and what is it that you're interested in within the game? So straight away, they're kind of aligning your role with that. And, and ultimately it's the same with kids when they learn, right? If they give you the answer, they're more likely to fulfill what that answer is than if you gave them to it. So it definitely really, motivates you to work for them and do the best of your ability. And I think just, all the best books say surround yourself with people who ultimately you can learn from and set a really good culture. And I think those three owners, Mike, Matt, and James, they're great people as a first point, but they all have just really different skills and things that teach me every day and all the staff. So you got James, probably one of the most articulate people that I've ever met in the way that he can communicate. You've got Mike, who no one could ever say hasn't put an absolute 120% into everything he does. And then Matt is obviously really good at putting systems in place and making sure that everything that everyone's working on is aligned. So I think it's just, really difficult to find so many people on the same page who've got different skills and really helps excel a company. So
I would definitely agree with that the three of them, I think, have this unique sort of yin and yang amongst the three of them, that they have strengths that elevate the sort of collective, the mission of what they're trying to accomplish. And I think, I've said this to other people. I think I've even said this to you as well. I think you, like, what you've done in terms of you coming on and joining them has absolutely like become such an integral part of what they do. And it's also allowed the business and allowed kind of what Beestera is to also grow exponentially into kind of this completely new thing. Cause like you've been able to sort of almost come in and like carve out this role that you've had. I know like Matt did a little bit of team stuff before, but maybe even describe that, like coming on in a way and sort of creating this role that you are now in Beestera, and like what you've done with it in the past 2 to 3 years is impressive.
Yeah. So my current role is director of team training. So what that kind of entails is working with a lot of different local clubs and sending out our own coaches to assist some of those clubs with their sessions, maybe doing like one technical session a week for each team at a club is kind of the baseline for a lot of teams. And I think for me, it's become really valuable from the sense of, I think so much of the focus on youth soccer is on those elite teams, right? The best teams in the area, ECNL, whatever. But ultimately, I think if you can grow soccer from the ground up, that's only going to improve like the level of those teams above that. So I've kind of really enjoyed that process of helping clubs, helping coaches, and really maybe just giving those players a, quote unquote professional coach to assist them with their sessions. So
how's the difference been in sort of educating players versus educating coaches?
From what sense?
I guess in the sense of like kind of going in and conducting a session with players and your objectives and what you're trying to get out of it versus trying to demonstrate to a coach how to do that, right? Especially like to a coach who maybe has never done it before, who's a volunteer parent and has said, I played soccer 15 years ago for 1 year. And now you're trying to kind of show them, all right, these are the ideas that we're looking to get out of the players. This is the way in which we're trying to do it. And then, does that make sense? Like how to actually teach a coach how to coach?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's really important to show that you respect that coach and the time that they're putting in, because that's ultimately really important. And I think it would be very easy to go in and say, you're not doing the best job possible for these kids, where in the sense they are, from the limitations that they have as someone who maybe hasn't had the experiences that we have. So showing them that respect, first of all. And then I think a lot of their buy-in from those coaches comes from the effect that we maybe have on the players. So they can see that the kids enjoy it when we come in. Not saying that we'll come in and make a session that's purely based on fun, but we'll make a session that's challenging and hopefully fun at the same time, through competition, through keeping score, or through getting lots of touches on the ball. So I think a lot of the time that the players themselves are the best idea of the product that we give, and the coaches buy in from there. Yeah. And, we get so many clubs that will see what we work on each week, and then they'll take that same topic and they'll expand on that the next week and be asking for ideas. So that for me is always where I feel most proud.
Yeah. It definitely has to be rewarding to see. And to, I know it's been even rewarding too to see like the development of some of these teams, like the Niskayuna team that you and I were just talking about the other night. Like it was cool. James and I were speaking yesterday as that team was training, and like there was a bit of a proud moment even for me where I was like, I worked with that team for like a whole year.
Yeah.
I think it was in 2022 where that was, almost like my team.
Yeah.
And now to just sort of see where all those players have gotten to and where they're currently now at in their stage of development. And, there's been other Beestera coaches who have been heavily involved in that group's development. Yeah. And like, it's a rewarding thing to see for sure.
I think we're in a really unique kind of a job, coaching, because it's sometimes very hard to sell to parents, to other coaches, that not stopping the session and giving information every 30 seconds is the best way to actually teach, to let them play, to set them challenges, to step in only once every 3 or 4 minutes or 5 minutes, because maybe it looks like you're not doing a job as a coach. So I think ultimately the fact that a lot of the clubs in this area have trusted us to develop their players over a longer period, where you start to maybe see some of the fruits of that success. For example, the Niskayuna team, like you said, I think, I'm just looking forward to hopefully that being, a similar model that progresses across the other clubs that we work with as well. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so it sounds like it's like you get this really cool opportunity, or this, fulfilling opportunity as what you do in Beestera. So talk to me too about the decision to also, you're also the Hudson Valley women's head coach and the New York Shockers, which is kind of like a summer team for a lot of these local college players and really high levels in the area. So, maybe even tying back to what we said about before about taking on too much or taking
that's
on
what
just
I was going to say.
right
That
enough.
all comes back to not being able to say no.
It's still a process that we're still working on, and this is evidence of it.
Yeah. I know we laugh about it, but that was honestly the mistake I probably made. I couldn't say no. I took on all these other things. Originally I was only supposed to be an assistant of the men's team at Hudson Valley Community College. And then about a week before I started, the women's coach left, and there was an opportunity, so I had to take it.
Yeah.
And obviously the New York Shockers women's team as well. I think that's just such a great thing for the area in terms of everyone kind of having a team to root for and support and allowing players to carry on playing. But I think the one thing that's helped me with those, because both of those jobs now I've had for like 3 years on the side of doing Beestera as well. And I think because I've had that experience with them now, I think I've got kind of a few systems and processes in place where I'm not always having to think so critically about what's the next step. I kind of already had that roadmap kind of laid out.
Yeah.
So it does mean that I'm able to kind of, balance those out a little bit better and feel like I'm, doing a good job with all of them as opposed to being overwhelmed. So
makes sense. Yeah. So if we talk about sort of your coaching sort of as a whole at this current stage, right? Like you get such a variety in what you get to do throughout the course of your year. I mean, where do you kind of see, you can maybe talk about it personally for you as a coach, or even, what you kind of see in terms of the growth of Beestera, whether it's impact on the game, like where do you kind of see what lays ahead for you in the future or goals you have set out for yourself?
Yeah, I think, I've said this on a podcast I did recently, is I think for so long I was of the mindset of I'm going to get the next thing. I'm going to go and get the next thing, the higher level, like professional team, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And I think, I've just hit 30 now. I told myself I was going to grind in my 20s. I've hit 30, so I've got to hold myself a little bit more accountable here. So I'm trying to really just grow with the things that I'm doing now. So can I make Hudson Valley Community College a team that takes that next step to maybe go to a national tournament? Can the New York Shockers, can we really, continue to provide that great opportunity and maybe go and win the league and put ourselves on the map? And then with Beestera, obviously continue to grow the brand, but also helping the players, and develop the soccer from the ground up. So I think just transitioning to that in my mind of I'm happy with where I'm at, and we'll see what comes from it. And hopefully, I continue to improve and those things will continue to grow. I'm happy now, to be honest. So I feel really good in saying that.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to be in, because I think it's like, a lot of times as players and a lot of times as coaches, like that's sort of, it's, I guess, the blessing and the curse of being in sort of that athletic mindset of you always are seeking the next thing, right? You get a little bit of success and it's like, okay, how do I get to the next goal and how do I level this up one? And it sort of eliminates the ability for you to kind of sit in the things that you have accomplished and be proud of what you have accomplished and kind of bask in that moment. And then, of course, we're always going to set goals for ourselves because we don't want to get complacent. But when you just are on this hamster wheel of always chasing the next thing, it becomes hard to really experience kind of the life that you're living and all these things, that you're now doing in your career.
Yeah.
And I think it's very cool for me as well, because I think it's changed over the time that I've known you. I think it's enlightening to hear you say kind of like, I'm good in this place right now. And yes, there's still a lot on your plate right now, but it's like that you're not sort of chasing, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is a tough thing that a lot of us struggle with.
100%. And I think if I take that into the context of like the New York Shockers, for example, and playing games with them, I think enjoying the process is important. And I think, at times with that team, for example, we win a game and I'm already thinking about the next one and I'm not enjoying it at all. Whereas maybe this year I'll start running down the sideline and fist pumping the crowd. I'm not sure yet, but definitely trying to enjoy the process a little bit more is definitely a goal of mine and something I feel like I'm being able to do.
Yeah. So, I really hope that that's what you're going to be doing.
We'll see.
Okay. So there's always sort of a kind of 3-part question that I like to ask at the end, because I like the context of these episodes and really the careers, the stories of people, sort of framework of a book, right? So we've talked about a lot of this today in terms of where you're kind of at now in your career, where you hope to go in the future, and this can be personally or professionally. But sort of the chapter that you're in right now, if we look at the book of Kurtis, what would you say that chapter sort of has in it right now?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it a lot all day. I think that chapter now is the learning to say no, and the asking for help and putting more trust in the people around me, and becoming someone who's good at delegating, because I still don't feel like I've mastered that anywhere near yet. So definitely learning how to be a good delegator, I'd say, was the chapter that I'd be in right now. So
yeah, sort of like protecting your peace almost, and also like trusting in other people to be able to kind of do some of the same things you.
Yeah, 100%. And I've always been that person on the field, in the nit and grit of it all. But now, we're at the point where we're training some coaches, doing all those things. So again, it's something I have to be good at now. So learning that process of, giving a little bit of knowledge to people and then trusting them to go and deliver.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So then the future chapters, like we said, kind of where you're at right now, but what chapters do you hope to still write in the book?
Yeah, I think I have little goals for every aspect that I have now with Beestera, New York Shockers, and the Hudson Valley. So I want to continue with them, and I think like going on to what the next chapters may be like. Hopefully, it's giving people a guide to maybe learn from some of the mistakes that I've made. So like any good book really is a problem, solutions, and then a reflection. So I'd be hoping to, continue to learn and make those mistakes, which I'm sure I'll make, and then hopefully use that as a platform to kind of teach the people who are, maybe starting out or looking to grow as a coach. So,
yeah. I'm wondering if you have this same thought as well. Like, pressure isn't the right word, but I definitely do feel like sort of a sense of responsibility when, younger players or younger coaches kind of ask me about things, or seek advice. And I feel like that's a really powerful moment there, to kind of help guide. Because like you said, we've each made a lot of mistakes. And so there's part of you that wants to help kind of guide that next person coming up asking you and help them avoid some of the same things that you did, while also understanding that a lot of those mistakes, a lot of those things where we fell on our face, like they helped us kind of get to the point where we are now and the place that we are now in our career. So I don't know. I wonder where the balance in that is,
I think that's a really great point. And I think when I even first started out training coaches, I think I would see a mistake and I would step in and I'd be like, listen, this just happened. Like, how are you going to deal with it better next time? Whereas that ultimately puts so much pressure on that person in the moment. And as hard as it is, I think, letting people make those mistakes, reflecting upon it afterwards, and then challenging them to maybe try a different tool or trick next time they experience that problem is definitely the best way to do it. And it just takes not being so autocratic as a coach and as a manager, really, is giving people like that where they can feel vulnerable and make mistakes, and they're not going to be put under pressure from it. It's just going to be a viewpoint of, can you go and learn from it and maybe improve moving forward. So I think that's definitely a challenge to do. And I think maybe I've even done that with you in the past, is go up to me and said, hey, what do you think happened there, mate? And
I remember. I can still remember certain sessions. I can remember certain sessions where I'd be running something, and you would just come over to me and be like, "What's going on? Why isn't he here? Why is he over there? I need this." And I'm like, "Brother, I've done this a time or two before. It may not look like exactly where we're gonna get to, but trust me. Just give me a second. Just trust me."
And I get it, and the more I reflect on my experiences learning as well, is the worst thing that can ever happen to you as a coach is, you may be you're under an exam or assessment or whatever it is, and you're about to make a coaching point or about to make a change, and then someone will step in and be like, hey, have you tried this? And you're literally about to do it in 30 seconds.
Yep.
So I think when you really think about it, just letting people make those mistakes and reflect is important.
Yeah.
And I think James is from Beestera, is obviously close to Doug Lamothe, who is one of the masters of teaching teachers. Coaches, teachers, same thing. And he always talks about standing on the side and having a little cue where he'll step in with his hands behind his back. And that'll mean that maybe he has like a little suggestion for the coach. If they want to, they don't have to come and hear it. And that way it just allows the coach to, make their own decision if they want that support or whether they're, about to showcase what they're maybe looking for anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a great point, because I think when we look at like sort of the art of coaching, right, especially as we've done this now for a while, there's so many, like, I've changed as a coach so much from when I first started doing this. And I think there are a lot of things where, like, there's also like a bit of an experimentation kind of that we even still have as coaches, where we like, we'll try something, or we'll almost like put ourselves in a position where like, let me see if I can figure this out. I'm just going to put this out there. I don't really know if it's going to work or not. I think I know where I want to go with it, but I want to see if I can get there to the end result. And so like, I remember you said this to me the other day when you were in private training, where you were like, I'm going to try this like new thing. And then the moment that you tried it was like when James walked over. And luckily James is a great sort of evaluator, I guess, or a person to come and watch you, because he's going to allow you that space to figure it out on the fly while you're in a session like that. But I can see how, that can be a really daunting moment for a coach when it's like, all right, this is kind of the thing that I don't know how it's going to go. And I'm going to like, because we all have our sessions where we know like we could run that session in our sleep. I know every single coaching point what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of sessions where we go into it with a little bit of like, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm going to see if I can figure it out. And if you have someone that's watching right over your shoulder, they're going to think this guy doesn't have a clue what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. It's fascinating.
Yeah. And, I don't think I always had those experiences when I was growing up. I think I had a lot of people that maybe stepped in on me when I was maybe doing different roles. So I think that's definitely a goal, is to allow people to be creative, I think is the word, right? If we're too structured, it just gets rid of that creativity, that someone might surprise you or give you the best session that you never expected. So
yeah, exactly. And again, ties into why I say kind of Beestera is there's just something different about it, like different than other kind of coaching environments for sure.
Yeah, 100%. It always comes down to, there's never a financial figure on whatever you suggest to do. It's always a bigger goal than that. Is that going to develop the person? Is that going to develop the coach? Is that going to develop the player? So yeah, definitely really, really enjoy that. So
yeah. So last phase of the question is someone comes in and they read the book. I just read Kurtis's book. What is it that you want them to say when they're describing it to someone else?
Yeah, I think we're lucky in the sense of the last, decade or so. I think people have been more willing to like open up about the problems that they face, like from be it a mental health standpoint, or we've discussed a lot today about taking on too much, and sometimes trying to maybe hide that because you don't want to look like you can't fulfill what the role requires.
Yeah.
But I think people, if someone was to read a book that I wrote, I think, being able to ask for that help and not being afraid or feeling like that's something that you can't do. So I think that's really important to me, because I've been through those moments where, I felt like maybe not getting up in the morning because I took on too much. So I think hopefully someone taking some things away from me in terms of that would be something that I found really, really valuable. So yeah,
that's great, man. I'm definitely a proponent of that as well. I try and talk about on this platform a lot, and I try and talk about to anyone who's listening. I think your mental health is such an important part of whatever career you want to go into, especially when we talk about something as demanding and as pressure filled as kind of sport is, and it's very easy to slip into a space where you maybe lose sight of the most important thing, and that's kind of protecting yourself and taking care of yourself. And so it's like I said, it's been cool too for me to see your like growth and development with that, not only your growth and development as a coach, but just with that over the the course of the time I've known you. So
but really, really appreciate it. Obviously, it's been good fun that you when I do make a mistake, you can I don't mind if you tell me. It's always nice.
Yeah, we both are similar in that way. Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on. Thanks for a great conversation. Looking forward to hearing what the people have to say about it, and also getting to chat to the rest of the Beestera staff as well.
No, I really appreciate it, mate, and doing an awesome job with the podcast. And I certainly love to listen and different kind of people that you bring on it. So it's good stuff to you as well.
Appreciate it.
That's it for this week. I want to thank Kurtis once again. Amazing conversation. Amazing getting to hear about his process of building a club from the ground up, and the grind that it took for him to do that is crazy. We still reminisce on those times from time to time. And to see everything that he's accomplished now, being a high-level semi-professional coach, a collegiate coach, a private trainer as well, and what he's done with team training here in the capital region of New York has been truly, truly remarkable. So I appreciate Kurtis stepping in and sharing his journey with us and sharing some insight for all of you out there who are interested in the world of coaching. I think there's a lot of people who want to get into coaching and maybe are not sure how, and Kurtis is a great example of trying a bunch of different things and really, like I said in the very beginning, has a wealth of unique experience. So it was amazing getting to talk to him and getting to share his story with all of you. As I mentioned at the top as well, and if you are someone who has listened to this episode and thought, you know what, I'm really interested in getting into coaching, but I don't quite know how to, that would be the perfect opportunity for you to go ahead and schedule a call with me. And hopefully I can help provide you some guidance and then taking the next step in your career with some of my career consultant services that I'm offering. So if that is something that you're interested in, go ahead and click the link down below, and then we can get started. Thanks to Kurtis. Thanks to all of you out there. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.